taking the time to join us. We are our meetings normally take place on the third Sunday of every month, but this month we have a special opportunity to further our dialogue with members of our community and with Metro Council members to assess where we are and what we can do to deal with the housing crisis in Nashville going forward. The COVID crisis has shown us that the role that government can play in funding help for people in need, the availability of affordable housing is getting worse. And so we remain determined to match the severity of the growing crisis with the political will needed to solve it. Today's meeting will be different from our usual format, and so I'm pleased to have Kay Bowers talk about our goals for this particular meeting. So Kay, please.
Sure. Thank you, Monica.
Thank
so
you.
The purpose of what we're calling today a virtual dialogue is to, number one, hear firsthand from people who are on the ground, struggling, finding, and excuse me, keeping quality and affordable housing. Number two, we hope to learn from our Metro Council members what their views are on the work of the Mayor's Housing Task Force and what investments we as a government and a community need to make so that our citizens can have quality and affordable homes and strong neighborhoods. And then three, we want to understand where council and the mayor's office in particular is in the budget process. Where are we now? What's going on? What's going to happen in the future and when? And how we as advocates can influence the decisions made regarding where monies are allocated in Metro's budget. Just to note, we are abiding by the sunshine laws. We publicly noticed this event. This event is being recorded and a video will be available on YouTube. A request of you all, if you are new to our Noaa meetings, the task force meetings, we'd love for you to just introduce yourself in the chat and then tell us what neighborhood you are from, where you live in Nashville. We'd love to capture that information and then follow up with you afterwards and have a conversation. And Monica, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. I should have mentioned that I'm Monica Rainey. I'm co-chair of this task force, and Kay Bowers is also acting as a co-chair as well. So thank you, Kay, for that. We're pleased to have Shirley Marks to lead us in a moment of reflection.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. There's a quote that I like that is from Facebook. And it says that when life gets hard, try to remember the life you complain about is only a dream to some people. And for some people in Nashville, Davidson County, affordable housing has become a dream. Now, housing that Nashvillians can afford is disappearing fast. With the tornado in 2020 and the onset of COVID-19, it has made an even bigger crisis for housing. Now, my personal experience with affordable housing crisis came when I worked as a therapist with the homeless families at the Salvation Army Transitional Housing Program. I personally saw the challenges that the case managers had finding affordable housing for the residents and families in the programs, even to the point of having to find affordable housing in counties outside of Nashville, Davidson County. When I became a member of the Noaa Affordable Housing Task Force, then that's when I became aware of the total magnitude of the affordable housing crisis. For 5 years, Noaa has won $10 million in the annual Metro budget for the Barnes Affordable Housing Trust Fund, but that is still not enough. The Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous has a line that says, "When I stopped living in the problem and began living in the solution, the problem went away." I hope we continue to live in the solution on affordable housing in the Nashville, Davidson County area. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shirley. Next, we wanted to hear from some testimonies from people who have their own experiences with affordable housing. And first, we wanted to hear from a representative from Alameda Christian Church. I think you're muted. Can you unmute?
Yes.
There you go.
Good afternoon. I am Lily Wiggins, retired member of Nashville community. I'm also married to the pastor of a predominantly African-American congregation located in North Nashville in the Bordeaux area, where we have served our congregation over 20 years. Growing up poor as a child in a two-parent household, I was blissfully unaware that even with both my parents working, their combined take-home pay for a family of 5 put us below the poverty level. I was unaware that we're any poorer than anybody else because we had a roof over our heads, food on the table, clothes on our back, and per my memory, did not seem to lack much. In other words, our basic needs were met. Long before COVID-19, before the devastating tornadoes of 2020, about the time Nashville was being touted as the IT city, I became sadly aware that those working in lower wage jobs were not only struggling to make ends meet, but also were challenged to stay in or find housing they could afford. In my role as pastor's wife and lay leader, some of our single mothers shared about being forced out of their Section 8 housing due to their landlords dropping out of the program because they could make more money by renting or outright selling their property. As housing became more costly and less available, they were eventually forced to migrate from Nashville to bedroom communities like Gallatin, Laverne, and Hendersonville to find housing, which led to them commuting back and forth into Nashville for employment. I come today to advocate for all those in this situation because finding affordable housing has worsened and it's not getting better. In fact, it's a crisis. All people should be able to live and thrive in their community. They should not have to live miles away from their jobs, their family, friends, and support systems, or have to cut into already limited income with increased costs of gas to fill their tanks driving back and forth. Housing is a basic need that needs to be addressed. I serve a justice God whose prophet Amos cries out to us to let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. Council, I call on you today to commit to allocating funds to the Barnes Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Let us reimagine a Nashville where all basic needs, specifically today, affordable housing, is available and in reach for all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We also wanted to hear from representatives from the West Nashville Dream Center.
Haley Tressler, and I'm the resource coordinator at the West Nashville Dream Center. One of my responsibilities is to assist with our community members who are searching for housing. And I've seen the number of individuals needing assistance with rent or just needing to find new housing increase. Just the more I've been in the job, and honestly, the further into COVID that we go, it's just getting worse. Recently, one of the apartments, one of the last apartments really in the 37209 zip code that's considered truly affordable is, I've learned, has been purchased by an out of town, I guess, investor person. And it's one of the apartments where we have a mobile food ministry. It has 288 units. Rent has already increased at least $100 a month. Section 8 rates have been raised as high as they can be. And rent is going up again in May. The plan is that by December, at least 45% of the occupants are going to have been evicted, removed, what have you, so that the apartments can be renovated and then rented out at fair market value, which of course then begs the question, where will the tenants that have been evicted go? And we're not really sure. Just kind of contributing to the idea that housing is becoming a commodity more so than a right anymore. And we also wanted to allow one of our moms to share her experience with housing. So I'll let her speak to her experience.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I'm a Dream Center mom, and I lived in the 37209 area code for about 6 years. And someone ended up buying the property, but when they bought it, they convinced us that they wasn't going to change the monthly amount of the apartment, and also that they were saying that we could stay there. So after a month, they gave us a notice of 45 days to vacate. And we was like, that's not enough time because we don't have anywhere to go. And it's hard trying to find something that's in our range. And I have 3 kids, and we've been in the neighborhood. We love that neighborhood. And it was just devastated because we love the Dream Center, and we can't find anywhere close to the Dream Center to move.
And additionally, just to add to that, her rent was increased. Was it $900? That was what you were being asked?
No, I was paying $900. I was asked to pay $1,575 after that.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing. That's why we're here, to try to find some answers for these very difficult situations. We had planned on our agenda, we had India Puntgardner was going to speak to us about her knowledge about the homeless, the challenges that homeless face. And unfortunately, she's not able to be with us today because she's on the ground helping people that have been dealing with the flooding that happened last night. And there were unfortunately 2 deaths that happened. And we are heartbroken that this has happened, and we're which is why we're here today, to try to find solutions so that this kind of thing doesn't continue to happen. So with So she's done a lot of work with Open Table Nashville, and we're continuing to work with them on this issue. So our prayers go out to those people and the families affected by the flooding last night. We also we want to hear from a representative from the Tornado Recovery Connection. So if you could.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Trevor Robinson. So I began as a disaster case manager, and then I've moved into a role as a housing specialist because we kind of wanted to concentrate our forces. So I get to hear just different specific concerns from each case manager. So I'll share just 2 experiences. So we have one client. She's lived in the 37076 zip code area. When the March tornadoes happened, she had 48 hours to evacuate, and her family, they were told they were insured by renter's insurance. But then when they got to the fine print, they found that their personal belongings were not covered. So this left them 48 hours to evacuate, and their personal items, their furniture, clothing, everything was completely destroyed. So since then, she and her spouse have been displaced since March 2020. They have lived in a tailgate behind a friend's place. And they've been turned down by numerous landlords because they do not meet the 3 times the monthly rent income requirement. And they are both on Social Security and disabled. And we have been working diligently just to find more options for them besides MDHA and Habitat for, we know that we have a lot of different competitive and long wait lists with that. So we're trying to find them, just different resources. So that's just one issue with one client. Another client is a tornado survivor as well. She is a mother of 4, and she's also legally visually impaired. This family was displaced for a few months and living with family members following the March 2020 tornado. She was eventually able to move to an apartment in the 37208 area. And then just within 3 weeks after she moved in, the apartment building, along with the one across the street, was sold to a company, and the rent increased $250. Now, luckily, one of our case managers has been working with that landlord to try to keep her client's rent at that same rate for the time being until she's able to move her out and find her an affordable place to live, some affordable housing. But that's just the current situation that we're in right now, increasing rent. So I believe her rent was $800, and now of course it's jumped up to $1,050. And then might I add that, we have this increase in rent, but the living conditions aren't the best. The upkeep of the property is not the safest, and it's not the cleanest. So these are just a couple of challenges that we have our tornado survivors facing as far as housing is concerned.
I'm also going to jump in real quick. Thank you so much for that, Tara. I work with Tara as well as a disaster case manager with the Tornado Recovery Connection. And I've also had a lot of challenges with clients I've been working with, folks who were able to afford where they were because the rent they'd been living there for 15 years, but now that they had to move out, and when repairs are made, landlords often use that as an opportunity to increase rent. And so it's been very, very challenging for us to do our tornado recovery work, which is why we had to have Tara transition to becoming a housing specialist. We needed a full, somebody focused just on that because it was such a challenge for us to actually get to recovery. And here we are more than a year past the actual tornado, and we're still struggling to get people into long-term affordable options that are still in the neighborhood where they want to stay. And I've had clients that have had to move out of where they used to be, and they are somewhere else now. And that's not what they would have wanted. They would have preferred to stay where they were, but just the economics of the way things are now. So I wanted to share one specific testimony that one of my clients wrote to share with you all. She has the warehouse where she worked, which is just north of I-24, kind of on the way out to Mount Juliet and Lebanon, was completely destroyed. And so she's actually been basically unemployed since the tornado. She's worked some part-time jobs here and there, but she's been unable to, she needs to find more affordable housing because just her income has become so unstable. But it's been very challenging for her because even many of our affordable housing providers, you know, there are income requirements. And if you don't meet the income requirements, you don't qualify. So I'm going to read her statement now. I'll also just say that she is extremely hardworking and has reached out to just about every nonprofit and, you know, affordable housing provider in Nashville. She has, and I'll read that list of those at the end, but here is her statement. My name is Sonia. Currently, I live in Nashville, Tennessee. I would like to take the time to express my concerns over the housing crisis in this great city. For the past year, I have faced several struggles. My income was directly impacted by the tornado and COVID-19 in March 2020. Personally, I have faced hardships with the lack of food, so I have depended on food pantries and soup kitchens. There are times that I do not have enough money to put gas in my tank or have enough money for an unexpected car repair. With unresolved solutions, distress affects my mental health and decision-making skills. I find it hard to pay rent, water, phone, internet, and utilities. When I'm alone, I cannot stop thinking about the worries that trouble me. I have reached out to numerous resources throughout Davidson County, and I'll just read you a short list of those. Tornado Recovery Connection, Project Connect, Legal Aid Society, West Nashville Dream Center, St. Louis Community House, Martha O'Brien Center, Second Harvest, Urban Housing Solutions, Affordable Housing Resources, Woodbine Community Organization, Nashville Conflict Resolution Center, Tennessee Housing Development Agency, Metro Housing Development Agency, Rooftop, NeedLink, Catholic Charities, Metro Action Commission, Community Foundation, and the Community Resource Center, among others. Her statement continues. My housing search has been very slow and difficult. There seems to be a long process with no time frame. I have no idea on waitlist procedures. Please improve application processes and give more options for safe and affordable housing. I would like to continue to live in Nashville, but the cost of housing and other necessities has me considering moving to another county, which would increase my commute time and gas expense. Please increase income-based housing options. Personally, I do not make enough money to qualify for traditional apartments that require an individual to make 2 to 3 times the rent. I would like to have a clean and safe place to call home with a permanent solution. I appreciate all of you for taking the time to address the very important housing challenges of Nashville. Please remember to include those less fortunate so there is an equal opportunity for housing for all.
Great, thank you, Steve. That's a good summary of why we're here today, and I thank all the people who have shared their stories to hit home why we're putting so much effort into this and the seriousness of the need. Paulette, if you could help review where we are with the what we're doing here and what you've seen with the Mayor's Affordable Housing Task Force.
Sure, and thank you for everyone who's here this afternoon, especially our elected officials. Since 2015, the Noaa Affordable Housing Task Force has operated from the premise that housing is a basic human right, because without affordable, stable, and safe housing, everything else is disrupted. We have called for and sought increased, recurring, and predictable funding for housing. We have also advocated for a comprehensive plan, approach, and strategy to housing, with metrics, with goals, and with accountability, and obviously with transparency. We have also called for an office or department of housing that is basically civil service. The reason for that is we have worked with Mayor Megan Barry, Briley, and now Cooper. And every time there's a new administration, there's some modification or some adjustment into how housing is approached. We have also asked these three things of Mayor Cooper in our October 2020 meeting with him. And I am pleased to report that in January, Mayor Cooper did comprise an almost 30-member panel of housing advocates, specialists, and experts to address this problem. One of the things, or several of the things that I think are important about this task force is that 3 Noaa members are a part of it: Kay Bowers, John Dean, and myself. In addition, Kay Bowers and I are also members of MDHA, and MDHA has 4 members who are members of that committee. And of course, Council Member Swara and Council Member Berkeley Allen are members of that committee. The committee includes banking officials, finance people, development, real estate people, representatives of HDA. And one of the things that I see as a plus of this committee is that unlike many, many other important and significant and impactful efforts, it has a whole array of people. And we have access to data. And one of the really difficult things in addressing and working on this in this space of affordable housing is the lack of quantifiable and consistent good data. So those are the pluses. This group was tasked with, we began meeting in January, we meet weekly, and by the end of April, we are supposed to make recommendations. The work of the committee has been divided into 2 subcommittees, a preservation one and a creation. And just last week, both of those committees' preliminary recommendations were put forward. The work is all online and available and accessible. What I would also like to say is there were key areas, 5 key areas that have been identified: policy access, financing, land use, and zoning are among the areas that each one of the subcommittees worked on. The co-chairs of the committee are, the task force, are Ed Henley, who is a founding principal of Pillars Development, which does real estate planning, development, and management, and also Dr. Mick Nolan, who is the founder of Nelson Community Partners, a firm that develops, preserves, and manages affordable units throughout the Southeast. While I am very pleased that the committee exists, and I am pleased with this work, what I have to say is that thus far, none of the recommendations have been extraordinary. The other area of which I have some concern is my expectation is that we would say we're going to build X number of houses, affordable housing, or make sure that they are built. We will galvanize the resources that are necessary to do that, and we will do that by a particular date. That isn't the trend or the direction, and we'll have to see. We still have more time to work, and please, your input is solicited. With that, I'll stop because there will be more discussion about the work of the task force later on in today's agenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Paulette. Yeah, we are a little bit behind schedule, so Steve, if you could just jump in and help us introduce the council members and let everybody know, perhaps give Maggie a chance to wave so everybody knows where to look for timing.
Absolutely. So thanks everyone for being here. We're going to move now into the dialogue with a few of our Metro Council members about this very important issue. To our council member guests, thank you so much for coming. In terms of our procedure here, we will be, Maggie Cox will be keeping time. She will hold up a sign when you have 1 minute. Well, she'll hold up a sign when you have 1 minute. And then when she holds up the nearing time, that's around 15 seconds. I will let you finish your thoughts, but please do try to finish up when you see that nearing time, so that we can keep things moving and hopefully have time for a few questions at the end. So we're going to dive right into this. I want to introduce our 3 council members. First, we have Berkeley Allen. She's been a council member since 2011. She was, until very recently, the chair of the Affordable Housing Committee. She's a member of the Budget and Finance Committee. Before being an at-large council member, she was the council member for District 18 in the Hillsborough Village, West End, Belmont, Vandy area. Her background is she's an engineer who's worked on the design of LEED certified buildings and infrastructure planning. And she was very active with the neighborhood in the Hillsborough West End Neighborhood Association and the president of that. We also have Councilmember Zulfat Swara with us. She was elected at large in 2019. She's a chair of the Affordable Housing Committee, which is our focus for today. She's also a member of the Budget and Finance Committee. She's originally from Nigeria, came to the US in 1993, and chose to make Tennessee her home. She's the first Muslim to be elected to Metro Nashville and Davidson County government, and the first immigrant elected to an at-large position. She's also the first Muslim woman elected in the state of Tennessee and the first Nigerian woman elected to any office in the United States. She's a full-time CPA. Finally, we have Council Member Quante Toombs. She is the council member for District 2. That's Bordeaux, parts of North Nashville, the Haynes Trinity area. She's the chair of the Budget and Finance Committee, a member of the Affordable Housing Committee, moved to Nashville in 1997 to attend Vanderbilt University. She's been a practicing attorney for 15 years, and she's a community leader and engaged in all kinds of things, was a founding board member of the Equity Alliance, among other things. So thank you to all our council members for being here, and we will dive right into our questions. This first section is focused specifically on affordable housing and will be with council members Allen and Swara. So the first question, you will each have 2 minutes to respond. Council member Swara will go first. How do you feel about the process and work that has been done by the Mayor's Affordable Housing Task Force so far?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Steve, and thanks for having me. Thanks, Noah, for all the work that you're doing on affordable housing. If anyone does not know what is needed, just listening to the testimony just now, just bring it all back. And it's so sad that after so many years, we're still here. As far as the task force is concerned, I think that what I love about the task force, which Dr. Coleman highlighted, is the fact that the major players are at the table. I think the problem in the past is that sometimes when an idea may be floated around, is not thought through, and you think, okay, yes, we can do this, but then you realize it cannot be done because there have been recommendations on affordable housing before, and why aren't we doing it? And so what I like about this task force is that there's so many people at the table, Noah and everyone represented, that bring all the nuances and the other lenses to look at whatever is being presented and what needs to be done. Yes, the recommendation is not solidified yet. We haven't presented them yet, but as we continue to look at it, what I look at is the ability for us to be able to make sure that whatever come out of this task force is going to be one that will be practical. From day one, this is not just recommendation just to have a list, but it's going to be who is going to be responsible, who is accountable, and the funding behind it. I'm glad that it has a creation component, but I also like the preservation. Because when we're talking about people losing their homes, people that are already in affordable apartment, but now have to pay 700 extra, I think that's just mind-boggling. So how do we make sure that we preserve what we have so that people are not displaced. That's a very big part of what the task force is doing. I'm trying to move so I can see the time. And so the task force is doing a lot, and I'm glad for this conversation. And I think that the onus will be on the recommendation that we put forward, and I think it will be a good one. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Allen.
Thank you, and thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. As both Dr. Coleman and Councilmember Swar have said, this is the most amazing collection of people who know how to make affordable housing happen. That, you know, if this group can just get what we think is important onto a list and then get the political will behind it to make it happen, they know how to do this. What we continue to come back to is that many of the things that we need to do require funding, and that will be the challenging part of it, is figuring out how we can leverage federal dollars, which I think is more likely now than it has been in the past. So I'm excited to have a group available to put together options for that. My hope has always been to be able to do what Noaa has been asking for, which is a 10-year plan that will look specifically at how many units do we need to create in which of the niches, 30, 60, and 90% of area median income affordability. And who's responsible for that? What can MDHA do? What can the nonprofit builders do? What can Habitat for Humanity do? What can the for-profit builders do? And, you know, what incentives can we create to make it possible for them? Right now, the focus that we've heard repeatedly in our charge is to look at things that are attainable in 1 to 2 to 3 years. And I think that really is important to know what the quick wins are. And I'm hopeful that we will be able to get those lined up and to have a specific plan on moving forward with those, but to also say, we know how big the whole problem is, and we believe that it can be solved in a period of 10 years. And here are the other steps that we need to take beyond those first 3 years. So I'm hopeful that we'll come up with a 10-year plan and that we will get the mayor's office committed and obligated to create the housing scorecard that we passed legislation on 2 years ago and have yet to see published yet, so that we have the metrics and the accountability that Dr. Coleman talked about. So it's an amazing power team. I think if we are allowed to just put what these people know on paper and then get the will behind it, that we can really make a significant dent in this problem.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Our next question is, what do you think needs to happen after the task force presents its recommendations to the mayor on April 15th in order to move from recommendations to the concrete action that's so sorely needed? Again, 2 minutes each. This time, Councilmember Allen, you'll go first.
Great. So there's several components that Dr. Coleman mentioned that we've been focusing on: access, policy, finance, land use, and zoning. And all 5 of those can both be obstacles and also tools to make this happen. So with regard to policy, we simply have to pass whatever legislation is necessary. I think there are some tax abatements that the council could pass if we have the political will to do that, and the support from the community. Noaa is great at providing that kind of support. That would simply say future tax revenue from this multifamily property can be used to help make up the difference in rent between market rent and what the tenants are able to pay. That's a policy change that we need to make. From the finance end of it, as we've continued to say, we've got to know that $10 million that Noaa expects, that the Barnes Housing Fund expects to get every year can be depended on, won't be impounded, and that is absolutely going to be there. And then look at, is there a dedicated source of funding that we can assign to that, which is really important. Other things are less in the council's hand, and I think, again, are areas where Noaa can be really helpful. Land use and zoning require the community's support. And interestingly, so many people support housing affordability in the abstract until you try to put something on their street and it means it may require more density than what is there. And people will will say, yes, we support the affordable housing piece of this, but we don't want the density because it will increase traffic on our street, and therefore we're not going to support this project. So we've somehow got to continue to educate the community that the people who need this housing are their children and their children's teachers and their perhaps even their elders. And that also then comes back around to when zoning changes are needed. So I think we can put whatever we want to in our recommendations, but until we get the funding and community support for specific projects behind it, those will be obstacles that we've also got to overcome.
Thank you. Thank you. That's obviously something where Noaa and our other advocacy organizations can really help. Councilmember Suara, the same question, please.
Thank you. I think Councilmember Allen talked about a whole lot of it. I'll just add that, you cannot do affordable housing without funds. And so the first thing is that since the mayor convened this task force and the budget season is on us, making sure that the money is in the budget. I mean, that's the very first step. The other part of it, the part that the council could do is that there are policy items that will come out of the recommendation that would need council to act. And so council members, the Affordable Housing Committee, and the rest of the county council being ready to pass those policies will be a great one as well. The other thing is that one of the things that the task forces also talk about is access. Access is very broad. And so how do people know that these resources are out there? How do people know where to go to when they do need help? And I think that no matter what you put out there, if people are not using it and people don't know about it, then you still have this. And so making sure that we get the word out, making sure that organization like Noaa and everyone get it out to say, this is the resources, this is what is down there, this is how to access it, so that people can actually be aware that it's there and people can make use of it. I think those are the things that I would like to see happen. I'm going to come back to the state. I think that I hope that we all are ready to also contact the state with all that we need. We need power at the state level. When we talk policy, there's so many that we want to do. There's some that we've done, but we get preempted. And so we need to start planning as part of that strategic 10-year plan is that how do we get the state behind some of these things so that we can actually put it into place. So thank you.
Right.
Thanks very much. So our next question is that Noaa Affordable Housing Task Force, and Noaa more broadly, strongly believes that in order for Nashville to make real and sustained progress on affordable housing, our city government needs a separate and dedicated department or office of housing that's led by a senior level executive with substantial housing experience. We see this in many other cities facing affordable housing challenges. Do you agree? And if so, how could we create this here in Nashville? If not, what do you propose instead? And we're going to say a minute and a half for each of these because we're a little bit behind. CM Suara, you'll be going first. Thank you.
There's a saying that you spend money to make money. And I think that we need to put the resources behind being able to solve this problem. I think one of the things that I've seen again is people not knowing where to go. All the information are all over the place. And another critical point where I agree with a Department of Housing is the fact that sometimes policy changes with administration. I went through the Affordable Housing Task Force recommendation under Megan Berry, and I was like, wow, this will solve all of our problem, but we're still here talking about it. And so having a department does that. I would let you know that, yes, there are concerns about budgeting, funding it, what happens. Maybe we should use another department like MDHA to do it rather than have a department of its own. But I would say that if we really want to solve this problem, if we really want to tackle it and do what is necessary, I do believe in having that department and putting the resources behind it. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Same question, Councilmember Allen. And if you could touch on maybe what that would take. Would it be a resolution? How would we create that, or how would we do that?
That's a great question. I'll have to say I still have some to learn about that myself, but I think we can look at the process that we're going through right now to create the Department of Transportation, and which has become surprisingly controversial. And the steps that are being taken there are to look at an existing department. I think just from a pragmatic and less costly process to say, let's look at an existing department that has many of the functions already and use that as kind of the starting point. So could we use Metro Social Services or Metro Action Commission as the anchor point, and either add a second senior level executive as a co-director of that department and elevate them to that level? Or do we go about creating an entirely new department? I mean, I think when we create an entirely new department, as Councilmember Swar has said, that requires the commitment of funds to fund new positions that haven't been there before. Perhaps we just slide those over from where they've been in the mayor's office. The pros and cons of this that I see are obviously it doesn't change with the wind of the new administration, and that's a huge advantage. But the disadvantage that I see is that it doesn't always have the full weight of the mayor's commitment behind it if it's a department. So, I mean, either way, it matters significantly whether the mayor is committed to this or not. And right now, this mayor is committed, and I give Noah some credit for that. I mean, a lot of credit for that, just because of the proactive way y'all go about campaigns and making mayors commit to things. So regardless of whether it's a separate department or it's part of the mayor's office, if the mayor doesn't have that as a commitment, it will not be as effective. So either way, that continuing to have the mayor's office realize how important this is going to be an important part of that.
Great, thank you. And Councilmember Toombs, we're going to be moving to your portion of the segment soon, and I'll be very interested in your thoughts on that. And there'll be a portion where you can respond to that question about the separate Department of Housing. So moving right along, so as leaders, council members Swara and Allen of the Metro Affordable Housing Committee, what do you see as the committee's primary role and function with respect to affordable housing in Nashville? What does the committee do, and what's its purpose? 1 minute each. We'll be very quick, and then we'll move on to another question about this committee.
The committees. Am I going first?
My apologies.
No. It's CMI.
Council Lady Allen, please go first.
Okay, thank you. Wasn't sure. So, I mean, I think, at the least common denominator is that we simply approve legislation that's already coming through with regard to pilots for low-income housing tax credit and other things like that. When we are doing our work well, I think that we are being proactive to work both with the recommendations from the task force and from anything else that housing advocates have suggested might be a useful tool to try to proactively create those tools. We spent some time this year working on rental protections. As Councilmember Swara pointed out, the state has not been helpful in supporting those. So some of that work is currently less effective than it was a couple of months ago. And we're also working on creating more tax incentives that may be useful. So I think we serve that function, and we serve the function to continue to pressure the mayor's office through for the Barnes Fund and other means that they have to continue to look for ways to create housing. So both our legislation and our advocating for the mayor's office to be more proactive.
Thank you. Councilmember Swara, same question. If you have anything to add.
That's it. I mean, policy and advocacy, that's the primary function, and making sure that anything, because our job is to make sure that we codify things that people have to follow. And so, yes, that's it. I don't want to take more time.
Thank you. So our last question in this section is really focused on the Housing Committee before we move on to Budget and Finance, where Council Member Toombs is the chair, is how could the Affordable Housing Committee play a role in establishing this strategic direction and goal for affordable housing in Nashville? And how could Noaa help you in these efforts? This will be 2 minutes each. If you can keep it to 1.5 minutes, that would be great. And CM Swara, you'll be going first this time. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I'll start with the part where Noaa can help, because as many of you know that we don't have staff as council members. And so getting the council together to form a strategic plan will just take time, and it will be talking. And then, but if there is a strategic plan put together, either by this task force or Noaa, I think this committee plays a big role. Rather than just looking at bills that are coming through the pipeline to us, we've been doing a lot of work in the last couple of years since I've been there, a year or two, where we actually bring people to come and talk to the Affordable Housing Committee, where we're being proactive in looking down the pipeline, what needs to happen, not just approve the pilots. That's how we were able to do the rent control stuff. And so the way that I see it is that I would like for the Affordable Housing Committee on an annual basis to take this strategic plan or goal that is now developed either by the task force or Noaa, and to be able to say, how do we make this happen? What are the priorities that we want to have this year? What happened last year? Why are these not done? And if it's a policy that needs to go behind it, then for this committee to come up with that. I think being proactive and looking at it at the beginning of the year, not waiting for things to happen, will help us a lot. And if Noaa comes up with that, I think that would be great. And I think if we come up with it ourselves, I think that would be very good. So I would like to see the committee not being reactive to events being happen, because people were displaced because of the tornado. Now we're thinking, how can we protect people? But I think if it is a strategic plan, it means that there needs to be a discussion on what are the strategies, what are the obstacles, how do we go about doing, what are the resources that are needed. And I would like to see the next Affordable Committee do that at the onset, the very first meeting of that committee, to come up with those plans and to come up with a plan on how to get it happen. And I think when we do that, I think that would be awesome. Since our job is making bills, and I will tell all of you that that's a very big part of it. As someone who came from the advocacy world, you can advocate all day, right? And you get limited in what happens if there's not teeth behind it. And so having those policy is the biggest thing that we can do to help our people, and being proactive from the beginning is something that I would like to see the committee take on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Allen, same question to you. Oh, I'm sorry, did I?
Sorry, I had some technical difficulties. Could you repeat the question?
The question was, how could the Affordable Housing Committee play a role in establishing a strategic direction and goals for affordable housing in Nashville? How can Noaa help you in these efforts?
Gotcha. So I think Councilmember Suara lays out a really great plan of at the beginning coming up, either latching on to specific policies or changes that have been created by the task force or by Noaa or by Urban Housing Solutions, Affordable Housing, all those nonprofit guys have specific things that they need that they come to us with. So I think that's an important piece of it. And the education piece, allowing people to sit in our meetings and learn about kind of the technical parts and pieces of that as well, is also important. And somewhere as we've said repeatedly, somewhere along the line, we've got to have a policy or a method of getting the state to stop obstructing what we're doing. And right now we simply react on that one as well. And I think, Noaa, if you have any kind of organizations in small towns, because Knoxville, Memphis, and Chattanooga go through exactly the same thing we do. Anything we want often gets shut down by the rural legislators. So if there are any Noaa brother or sister organizations in smaller towns that can help us reach their legislators, their senators and representatives, and just indicate to them that this is a problem I think that exists everywhere, that could be huge.
Thanks so much for that. And actually, Noaa, as you know, we have sister organizations, Micah in Memphis and Caleb in Chattanooga, that are part of the Gamaliel Network. And we're also, Noaa is now getting involved in state level organizing. And so we are working on those issues and look forward to working with you on those. We're going to now quickly move to the second question, or sorry, the second portion of this question and answer with our council members. This is going to be more focused on the budget, and we are now in the budget budget process, and it's currently being developed. We're very lucky to have Councilmember Toombs with us. She is the chair of the very important Budget and Finance Committee, which will be integral in making next year's budget. So I'd like to ask this question to all three of you. And Councilmember Toombs, I'm going to give you 3 minutes to respond. And Councilmembers Allen and Swirl, you'll have 1.5 minutes each. I just want to make sure that you have enough time. And if you'd like to respond to anything kind of in the earlier section, please do feel free, although we'll also have more time for questions later. So what do you think of Noaa's 3 affordable housing priorities? Noaa's 3 affordable housing priorities are: 1, $20 to $30 million for the Barnes Fund; 2, a separate Department of Affordable Housing that is has a senior level executive leadership and is separate from the mayor's office; and 3, a serious housing plan, anywhere from 3 to 10 years with clear timeline and next steps. So what do you think of these 3 affordable housing priorities? Do you support them? Or are there 2 to 3 other things that you think would have more impact? So we'll start with you, Councilmember Toombs. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Steve. So just to start off, yes, I do support the 3 priorities. I think that we do need to put more money into the Barnes Fund. I will say that there is some consternation around the Barnes Fund because there's a concern about concentrated poverty, and that comes up a lot, particularly in North Nashville. I know in my constituents here, affordable housing, they think low-income housing, and it's probably a consensus in my area that there's a lot of low-income housing already. And I try to do my part in educating people on what affordable housing is people not being cost burdened by their rent payments or mortgage payments. But there is that bit of consternation amongst constituents as well as council members. The separate department, I think that that's a good idea. I agree with Councilwoman Allen that we need to look at what current departments are doing and whether or not that could be added to a current department. We do have departments that we've created by ordinance, the Arts Commission, as well as the Human Relations Commission. So perhaps there could be a Affordable Housing Commission, but there would have to be funding attached to that so that they can continue to exist. As far as the long-term plan, I think that that's key. Councilwoman Allen said there's already an ordinance out there that requires a housing scorecard that hasn't been acted upon, and so the council has already put the framework in place for there to be that long-term plan so that we can actually tackle affordable housing in our cities. I think you're getting to the meat with those 3 priorities. I do think there needs to be that education piece on what affordable housing means. I also think that, though Noaa's focus is affordable housing, I've heard, and I agree with this, another council member say, I don't have a problem with affordable housing as long as it comes with the jobs, the infrastructure, and the transportation. So those 3 pieces go along with affordable housing. So I think that you can't talk about affordable housing without those 3 pieces. But I think that goes with that education piece. If you're showing how those 3 things interact with affordable housing, I think that you get more buy-in and more constituent support for putting more money into the Barnes Fund.
Thank you so much. Could you just say a little bit more about the consternation that you were speaking of in terms of your constituents, low-income housing versus affordable housing, just to make that clear for everyone here?
So I've done 2 pilot projects so far, and that's payment in lieu of taxes. And that's when folks are doing an affordable housing project. Oftentimes they will go through MDHA to get a pilot so that they can afford to do the construction of the project and to offer a decreased rent, which is based on income. And so what I hear a lot when those projects come up is this going to decrease our property value? Because it's a rental property for one. And then also the perception amongst many in the Bordeaux area, the Northeast Nashville area, the areas that I represent, is that affordable housing is low income housing and that it's going to decrease property values, and that it's going to concentrate poverty in our area. And there's already a lot of poverty in our area. So it really takes a lot of education, and also takes a lot of strategy on my part to make sure there's a diversity of housing options, so that I don't give the impression that I'm attempting to concentrate poverty in the district. I'm just trying to make sure that folks at all income levels have housing options. But there is a huge education piece, because that's what pops up into a lot of people's minds when they hear affordable housing, that it's low income housing and that it's concentrating poverty in their area.
Got it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you for clarifying that, and something that we need to educate folks on. So, Councilmember Suara, the same question. What do you think of Noaa's 3 affordable housing priorities? Do you support them, or are there 2-3 other things that you think would have more impact? A minute and a half, please.
Thank you. I don't want to repeat what my colleague said. I do support them as well, but I do think that part of the conversation at the task force is how do we look into different options, different tools in the toolbox for funding affordable housing. Now, Councilmember Toombs mentioned how they feel about bonds fund. Yes, not just the citizens, but also council members. And I'm in a conversation with the housing fund with Ms. Hannah right now on some of those concerns in terms of not just concentrated poverty, but also the developers and the people that are getting bond funds. How do we make sure that it's not the same set of people? How do we make sure that we have minority developers being a part of this conversation? And so we're having a conversation. There's some things that they're planning to do, which I think is great, and I'll be working with them on that. And they're already doing a whole lot. But I think education is also vital, because no matter what we're doing, if people don't know about it, I think you don't have as much support for it. So having different options, we're looking at other types of funding, even in the tax fund. I just suggested looking at the IDB as a place to go for funding, as a partnership to do this. So there's so many things coming up in the pipeline, and I don't want to go into what the committee will be recommending, but everything that we're talking about here deals with all these 3 items, and I think that we will be getting some things done. We will be getting some things done. And I just want to wait until that committee have the full, because I think we may be talking about things here. I want to wait on the task force has the full recommendation. Everything that you're talking about is what we're talking about. Every obstacles, everything. So all of this is being done. But I want us to have the benefit of having everybody look at the pros and cons, come up with what is our best idea to do. I like the 2 to 3 year plan. I like the strategic plan and long term, but the people are hurting right now and people need help right now. And so the things that we can do right now is what I want us to be able to talk about. And that's what I hope the task force will be able to provide in the next couple of weeks. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Allen, same question to you.
Thanks. I mean, I think a lot of the key pieces have been covered. IDB is Industrial Development Board, for people that didn't see the chat, and they're one of several entities that can give tax abatements, because state law requires everyone pays taxes except MDHA, the Industrial Development Board, and the Health and Education Board. So those are possible groups we can be working with for tax abatements. And the reason to be looking at that as a tool is that the Barnes Fund has been amazingly effective at leveraging the dollars that the city puts in. Sometimes it's 6-to-1 ratio. Often it is creating home ownership, which is great and something we don't do enough of. We're learning how to use it for rental as well. And I think there are other tools in addition to the Barnes Fund that do require funding from either funding from Metro or foregoing taxes. So I would love to see Noaa push hard for additional funding for for the Barnes Fund, and for a dedicated source of funding that we can depend on, but also to push for funding for other options that fill in other niches, because we've got both rental and home ownership, and we've got people at different income levels. And as I've said earlier, different entities are good at filling those different niches, and the funding comes from different places. And Noaa's support for all those types of fundings, in addition to just the Barnes Fund, is really important.
Thank you so much. Our next question is specifically to Councilmember Toombs, given her position as chair of the Budget and Finance Committee. Could you please give the task force a brief outline of the Metro Nashville budget process and kind of highlight where we currently are in that process with a mind to how we can influence it?
Sure. And Mike, can you put up that?
And you'll have 4 minutes for this section.
Okay. So currently the mayor's office is meeting with the different departments to talk about what their budget requests are. And I'll post the link in the chat for anyone who's interested in looking at what the different departments' requests are. And so those meetings should end the 1st of April. So this week, man. Okay. So those meetings should end this week. And so once all that information is gathered, there's an idea of what the expenses are related to just departments. And then you have your centralized expenses that, you know, is more central to the mayor's office and what he identifies as the needs. So I will be talking to the mayor now, because again, once he gets all of that information from the departments and has talked to them and walked through their budgets, there's going to be, he's going to have an idea of what that portion of the total budget looks like. And he's going to work on that next piece, which is what are the administrative expenses. And there should be a budget projection from the finance director by then. And so you really want to be in the mayor's head as he's thinking about how to fill the remainder of the budget. And his budget is due to the council by May 1st. Once the budget gets to the council, there are some key dates, and the budget calendar for council is coming out this week. So the council will have its own budget hearings. We'll talk to not all 53 departments, but to probably about 20 to 30 of them. The budget committee, not just the budget committee, but council members have the opportunity to submit a wish list, which is things that they want to see in the budget. When you put those lists together, you also have to identify funding for the items on your wish list. So you want to talk to your district council person or any council person that you have a relationship with or wish to establish a relationship with, your council members at large. So that, you know, if affordable housing is your priority, you want that to be on their list, that there be more money put into the Barnes Fund. Because part of that centralized budget item that's not related to a particular department is the Barnes Fund. It's part of that portion of the budget. There'll be the public hearing, which tentatively is scheduled for the first meeting in June. So that's your opportunity to let the council know what you think about the budget, what you think should go in the budget. And there also are several work sessions scheduled for the budget. Oftentimes the budget chair has a substitute budget, which tweaks the mayor's budget some. And so that's another opportunity to, again, talk to those council members, talk to the folks on budget and finance, talk to the at-large council members, again, just getting in their head, letting them know that affordable housing is a priority so that they can push for it. The council has to pass its budget by June 30th. If it does not, then the mayor's budget automatically becomes the budget for the fiscal year. I will say that once the budget comes over to the council, there's not a lot that typically changes. If you remember last year's budget, there was a substitute that passed and it added about $20 million of additional funding to a $2.45 billion budget. So really it's the mayor gets the first bite at the budget, and it's really the most important bite, just because we're trying to change things around, and the budget has to be structurally balanced, meaning that expenses have to equal revenue. So we just can't put things that we want to have. We've got to be able to fund it as well. And so really you want to be talking to the mayor, because May 1st will be here before you know it, and he'll be presenting his budget. And you want to emphasize to him that affordable housing is important. And I think that that goes over, those are the highlights. You told me
Perfect.
to be brief.
Perfect. Thank you so much. No, that was very helpful and yeah, very illuminating. So our next question is to all three of you, and kind of ties in with the previous question. How can affordable housing advocates best achieve our priorities in the budget, and who should we be talking to and when? And we just kind of got to that a little bit, but if you have any more tips or ideas of specific people or ways to approach this issue, we would very much welcome those. So each of you will have 1.5 minutes, and we will start with Councilmember Allen.
Thanks. I want to go back to the point that that Councilmember Toombs raised about skepticism from some council members about concentrating poverty, or they'll call it disparate impact. And I think that that can sometimes be problematic when, as council members, we are advocating for additional funding in the Barnes Fund. When council members have other priorities and they have the impression, or they're hearing from their constituents, that, you know, they're being, quote, dumped on, which is, I think, an uninformed way to look at having housing that people can afford to live in be built in your district. That the times when I've thought, oh yeah, we need this, and I'm sure every council member will support it, I was surprised that it wasn't necessarily something that I could take for granted. So I would say, after first talking to the mayor, as Councilmember Toombs has pointed out, we could give you, I think, a list of council members who are skeptical of whether the Barnes Fund is being used in a way that's good for every district. And I would say that I think that it is being used very thoughtfully, and that that getting additional funding for affordable housing in whatever tool we can is good and should be supported by every council member, but that can be taken for granted. And y'all do represent a large enough group that you've got constituents in every single district, so you can help us with that. And that would be my number one ask.
Thank you. That's very, very helpful. Councilmember Suara?
Thank you. Yes, basically the same thing. You start with the mayor, because I think that whatever the tax was put forward, as to if there's no money behind it, nothing is happening. And since the mayor is committed to the task force, I think you start with that, and to make sure that whatever it is that we want done in that priority, that we make sure that it's in the mayor's budget. It is also important, like everyone is said, to talk to other council members. I think Noaa can do a great job of that. I think educating people about affordable housing and why it's important. Even when you think you know everything, even when you think you've heard it all, you come to something like this, you hear someone else's story, and you're like, this is still happening. And so getting that out and talking to council members about why this is important, because they have to support it as well. The three of us here on the Affordable Housing Committee, we're part of the choir already. And so how do we get the message to those that are not, in there? We even in our settings, we always talk to the same people that are already sympathetic. How do we get that message outside of that group? I think we need to figure out how to do that. And I think, and I'm talking constituents as well as council members. How do we reach those? I think will be the challenge for Noaa and advocates to be able to do on why this is important. Like I said, I'm working on some things with the housing fund that I think might help the perception with the bonds fund. When that comes to fruition, I hope that Noaa can support that and help us get that out, because education perception matters. When people don't know what's going on, they assume the worst, and letting people understand how all of this works is going to help the process. So let's think in terms of outside of the task force, outside of Noaa members, how can Noaa reach those that are not singing this tune already, so that they can be part of it and realize that affordable housing is crucial and it's something that we have to do now. Thank you.
Thanks so much. And Councilmember Toombs, you touched on this before, but if you have anything else to add, please do.
Just briefly, the council members who are skeptical of the Barnes Fund, I would get that list and just start talking to those folks. And when you're talking to them, you want to hit what I said earlier about the jobs, transportation, and infrastructure, because that's what they're going to hit you with, because that goes along with the concentrated poverty. So I would be, very well versed on those issues and be able to talk about those to the council members. And then going to the education piece, and I know this takes funding, but maybe some type of like social media campaign or something that would educate the constituents on what it means, affordable housing. And there's nothing wrong with low income housing. If that's where your income is, then that's where it is. People who work a full-time job should be able to afford to live in Nashville. And so there's nothing wrong with low income housing, but that's not all that affordable housing is. It's just that people can afford, they're not cost burdened when they're paying their rent. So I think there needs to be a lot of education around what affordable housing means. And I think that a social media campaign or radio campaign or something like that to get the message out about what it means, I think would be helpful.
Thank you so much. This is all very, very helpful suggestions. So now we are moving to our Noaa commitment questions, which I'm sure you've all become accustomed to at all of our Noaa meetings over the past 5 or 6 years. So each of you will have 2 minutes. Each of you will just have 30 seconds to respond to this question. So will you commit to working with Noaa's Affordable Housing Task Force on our 3 affordable housing priorities? And what does that partnership look like to you? And we'll give you each actually 45 seconds. Let's start with Councilmember Suara, please.
Yes, the answer is yes. And part of that commitment will involve attending your Affordable Housing Committee meeting, inviting you to the Council Affordable Housing Committee meeting, and making sure that we're sharing that information, because we may not know everything that is on the ground, but I trust Noaa with all what Noaa has to be able to have that. So yes, continue communication and attendance at your meeting, and invitation to our meeting as well.
Next, we'd like to hear from Councilmember Toombs, please.
Yes, I am committed to working with Noaa on its affordable housing priorities. The way I see that partnership working in the present is me using my platform as the Budget and Finance Chair to advocate for increased funding for the Barnes Fund. I have regular meetings with the mayor's office and with the finance folks, and that will be at the top of my list to push for more funding. So I think that is the best way in the present that I can be helpful.
Thank you so much. And thank you to all of you for your helpful thoughts and sharing that with us. So now we're going to move on to a summary of the current progress on the Mayor's Affordable Housing Task Force.
Do I get off free?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's been a long day, y'all.
It's been an amazing job. So the Councilmember Allen, I just want to say, yes, I'm committed as well. And I think meeting with the mayor specifically to talk about the Department of Housing is something that I could do. And I'm going to finish this housing scorecard so that we do have both a 10-year plan and metrics and accountability. So thank you for my 45 seconds.
Thank you, Councilmember Allen, and please accept my apologies for that. So we are now going to move on quickly to a quick summary of the Affordable Housing Task Force, the Mayor's Affordable Housing Task Force, with one of its members, John Dean.
Thanks, Steve. Hey, everybody. Paulette did a fantastic job of sort of walking you through what the Mayor's Affordable Housing Task Force is doing and the progress that's being made. So I'm not going to repeat that. This has been a very informed session all the way around. I'm just going to make a couple of key points. Number one, I think having the three of us, Kay, Paulette, and I, on the Affordable Housing Task Force has been a real strength for Noaa. And in particular, our little subgroup has been meeting before and after every Mayor's Task Force meeting so that we can digest together what's going on and formulate a common point of view going forward. So I'm really grateful for Paulette and Kay for participating in time together with me so that I can be near half as smart as they are as we go into the next meeting, which has been useful. There are two other key points I want to make that have been brushed upon but are really important. There's going to be a tendency to defer, deflect, or otherwise put off dealing with the central issue that is getting in the way of Nashville affordable housing. And that is that our state legislature's preemption of inclusionary zoning, rent control laws, and steering away dedicated funding to other priorities. And it's just going to be really important if we're going to get to where we need to go, that we not let go of that issue, recognizing full well that we're not going to get a solution to that this year. It's going to be a multi-year strategy. But we need the mayor in partnership with Noaa and other stakeholders across the state of Tennessee in order to attack those problems. And then finally, I'd say this, the danger in this activity that we're undertaking here is that we'll have a lot of meetings and a lot of conversation and a lot of us talking to each other about the progress that we're making and all of that. But at the end of the day, we're not being bold. And so when it comes to what Councilwoman Suarez says, the money behind it, I just want to piggyback on her comments that we need to be bold about what we're asking for. This is a very prosperous city. It's encountered some financial challenges of late, but those are being overcome as COVID progresses and we overcome it. It's my prediction that Nashville is going to be on fire again from an economic development point of view. We can afford to be a model in the nation for how to deal with affordable housing. And we need to expect that of ourselves, our city leaders, our real estate developers, and everyone else, that we are going to be a city where we tackle this problem as well as it's being tackled anywhere. So I just leave those thoughts with you, and thank you for the privilege of representing Noaa at the Mayor's Affordable Housing Task Force.
Thank you so much, John. And before we close out, we're going to hear from Elaine Smith, as Noaa's been holding one-on-one meetings with members of the Mayor's Task Force to try to get our message to them. So Elaine, if you could please share what we've learned so far.
Yes, sure. And can you hear me? Yes.
I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, just to not be repetitive with everybody's on the council's comments and our comments, I'm going to add a couple of things I've heard from the people who were nice enough to interview with us. And one is that this exchange of ideas has been, we can't underestimate how important it's been for people to give their time from these civic positions to come into these task force meetings. And we need to come out of this knowing that affordable housing will be a civic commitment. And it is our opportunity to up our game. If we haven't had this opportunity with such a wide task force in all these administrations, that we need to really take advantage of the announcement that's going to come at the end of April or whenever the task force report comes out. And in addition to increased resources and community education and a scorecard and private partnerships and the courage to get into bond financing, which we've not seemed to be able to have. Someone suggested that Metro could be more active in assuring its contractors pay a living wage, something we haven't really approached, but we need to have living wages being paid to people so that they can afford housing. And the possibility we link the homelessness with the housing in a mayor's office, maybe if it gets moved sideways. We need to have this consistent money and flexibility in the Barnes Fund. The two things that came up the most were the funding's not consistent and the cycles are not flexible enough to be taking opportunity, and that more could be done to provide infrastructure support for the Barnes grantees. That's a lot for them, an obstacle. We need to solve the time lag for the developers who are trying to build affordable housing and they are not competitive because of their time lag which goes into the zoning and the system, the process. We need accountability from all the people who are assigned to be a active participant in these goals and a cross-sector approach. And, you know, I'll just end with saying it, thanks to everybody who helped, but we need to make sure that particularly, I mean, in Nashville, like everyone has said, a 2-income family making minimum wage, how can we support them to have a house here? I mean, are these people really going to be left out or not? And maybe from what we've heard, we can get more involved in an education campaign and let the mayor know that.
Thank you so much, Elaine. Thanks for sharing that. So we have reached the end of our kind of public facing and public dialogue with our council members. If you're part of the Noaa Affordable Housing Task Force, please do stay on. But I want to thank, and Noaa and the Affordable Housing Task Force want to thank our 3 council members for participating today and for being such great partners and such strong advocates for affordable housing and for all of these issues related to equity and social justice here in Nashville. You are truly great partners, and we're grateful for your help and your wisdom, and really appreciate your help. We are committed to dealing with this issue, and we want to really light the fire under our community to see that, you know, Nashville has had a tornado, we've had the COVID pandemic, the bombing, and now we just recently had a horrible flood, all of these disasters. But the one that's kind of simmering at the bottom is the affordable housing disaster that we've seen, and that is really the invisible pandemic. We've seen that Nashville can step up and deal with the COVID crisis. We can get out millions of dollars to help people when they really need it. This is a crisis too, and we need to treat it with the same level of urgency that we see with the COVID pandemic and others. So thank you, and we will be in touch. And just a reminder to everyone else to please stay on this meeting. We will be finishing up as soon as possible. Thank you, council members. Thank you.
One thing that the council members talked about several times is that it's important for us to make our voices heard about what we want, both for our individual council members and to all the council members and to the mayor himself. So one thing we wanted to do before the rest of us leave this meeting is we've got 49 people here. Do you think it would be great to have 49 emails right this minute to the mayor? 49 emails right this minute to all the council members? I'm going to put something in the chat here. It's a sample email that you can send to your council member and to the mayor. Give me just a second to put it in there. Okay, I just put a file in the chat, and if you double click on it, it should open up. And if some of you have trouble with this, I can email it to everyone right after this, so don't worry. But it has an explanation in it. It has an email address for the mayor. It's mayor@nashville.gov. And it has a sample email that could go to the council members. Now you can reach all of the council members just by emailing councilmembers@nashville.gov. And this is in the document. And I've got a suggested email that says, here's what Noaa wants. You know, work with us to get this into the Metro budget. There's also something down at the bottom of the page that explains how you can find your very own council member, which one it is, and what his or her email address is. So if you email councilmembers@nashville.gov, it does go to everybody, but it goes sort of into a special pocket where they can tell you just did it as a broadcast thing. But if you do that and then email your personal council member, so you can say, I live in your district. That's something that's very important. So if you can, open up that file, and anybody that is able, just go to your email system. We're going to take just 2 or 3 minutes and go to your email system and copy that over or alter it however you'd like. But we'd just like to have some, we'd like to have some action right now. One of the things that Noah believes and that the Gamaliel Network believes that we're a part of is every meeting ought to either be doing an action, planning an action, or evaluating an action. So in this case, we're getting information and we're wanting to do an action. Sending emails to all of these folks. And I will email this to you after the meeting in case you're having trouble opening that up. Are there any questions about what we're suggesting?
Mike.
Yes, Elaine.
I just wrote in the chat box that in my email, which I intend to send momentarily, I'm going to remember to somehow acknowledge that the Barnes Fund got the $5 million that was postponed from last year's budget, and that we are greatly appreciative of having it restored to the full 10 million or whatever. I mean, I just think that's something positive to give him as we give and ask. If do it or not do it, doesn't matter.
That sounds fine. Just make sure that you let him know that that was great, but it's not enough.
I will.
Okay. All right. Any other questions about what we're doing? Again, I'll email this to you afterwards if there is. Okay, it's time for our, Steve, I think it's time for the evaluation. Is that the next thing? I don't have that.
Yes.
Okay. Well, all of you know how this works. We do a 4-part evaluation just very quickly to evaluate any meeting. And the first part to the meeting, to the evaluation is, what are you feeling as you're leaving the meeting? Now, rather than asking you to speak it out, put it in the chat. You know, what's the emotion? What is the feeling that you're leaving this meeting with? Encouraged, hopeful, feeling hopeful? Since that's part of our name, I guess that's right. You know, Nashville Organized for Action and Hope. Motivated, excited. Anybody else? Want everybody to have a chance. Proud. Yes, sir, Reverend Thompson. Motivated, encouraged and informed. Encouraged and hopeful. Are we talking to the choir? Worried. Okay, John, say another word about that. I think that's important.
Well, we've got these fabulous council members who are with us and who are totally behind what we're trying to do. And I just wonder who we're not getting to meet with us that we really need to be engaged in a dialogue with. And maybe this meeting doesn't lend itself to that. Maybe it needs to be a smaller meeting or a one-on-one or a power one-on-one. But I am worried that we're going at this with 3 great council people. What about the others?
That's a very good, in fact, isn't that what we heard from some of these council members, that we need to be about contacting others, especially the ones that are representing us? I do want to note very quickly that with Councilmember Suara being the head of the Affordable Housing Committee of the council, and Councilmember Toombs being the head of the council's Budget and Finance Committee, that is a very powerful, very, very powerful position. And she made a commitment to us to start talking to the mayor right now about affordable housing. So that's moving in the right direction, but John's exactly right. We don't need to be satisfied with talking to the choir. Let's see, anybody else? Hopeful, got a lot of hopefuls, committed. All right, and Winnie Farser is already starting to strategize. She has some District 1 Noah members who could engage Councilmember Hall, and maybe some clergy could help there too. The second part of the evaluation is simply, how did this meeting work? Did we start on time? Are we ending on time? I can make that part easy. We've run over time. But what did you feel like you got out of this meeting? You know, in terms of our performance, what did we get from this meeting? Just put something in the chat. What did we get from the meeting? Beautifully curated. Okay, well planned. This was a good meeting. Maybe we want to invite council members more often, Martha says. Specific actions that Noah needs to do. Steve did a great job. We got the issues out on the table, the commitments, good roadmap, empowered. Did it feel like a good balance? We had some good stories in there, as well as more technical stuff, strategy, direction, Anything else that you feel we got from it? Okay, Steve, you've got your fan club here. That's good. Support. Okay, okay. Information, all right, great.
Yeah, I'll just say, I think they gave us some specific action steps that we need to do to help them do their jobs. So I was really, really, impressed with that. And, we got our work cut out for us.
All right, all right. And that's one of the things that when I email you this file, the very first thing you can do is send a quick email to the mayor and the Metro Council members. So that's a first step. There's much more that needs to be done. The third thing in our evaluation is tension. And we actually want some tension. So we're moving. So we're doing something different. Where was the tension in this meeting? Just put it in the chat. There was some tension around time. You're right, Regina. We got behind and we were trying to catch up. You're exactly right. Where else was tension? Zoom's talking about the resistance. Yes, yes, Winnie, that's right. And Grace says it's such a huge issue. Time and community resistance to affordable housing. The reminder that there is resistance to the whole idea of affordable housing. That's right. There's tension with the state legislators. We're used to that, but it pops up again and again. And where is the housing scorecard that they were supposed to do 2 years ago? That Metro
I have a response to that.
Okay. All right.
Quickly, Barnes Fund has an intern for the summer and they're assigned to work on the scorecard.
Okay.
That's
good. Thank
their
you.
scorecard.
Thank you for adding that. Avi Poster says, always tension when our job isn't finished. State preemption, tension around Noaa needing to reach out more to those who don't believe in affordable housing, skeptic council members. Okay, we invited only the known friends to Noaa. Yes, we did. You're right, Reverend Thompson. We invited our council friends to meet with us and help us strategize. That's right. The fourth thing in our evaluation is that political learning that we always talk about. And that just means, where are we in our work in the city? And I was thinking about this and I realized this is such an overwhelming problem sometimes. You heard the stories in the beginning. You've heard people talking about, well, it's hard to get anything done because the state legislature. We've just heard that there are some people that don't want affordable housing. They're misunderstanding what it is. Sometimes that feels overwhelming. Well, here's an interesting quote that I found from Joan Baez, who is a wonderful singer and incredible worker for social justice. Joan Baez says, action is the antidote to despair. Action is the antidote to despair. So when we despair, find that particular action that we can take. We can make an email right now. We can meet with a council member later. There are actions that we can take so that we are not stuck in despair. So that's the political learning. Monica or Kay, do you want to dismiss us?
Yes, I haven't. This has been a jam-packed afternoon, but it's a moment that I need to stop and take because it's very important. Monica is going to be moving back to the East Coast next month, as I understand, and we want to be sure everybody knows that, and we want her to know that we love her and thank her for her leadership. We have some gifts that we are putting together for her that'll be dropped off to her, and I've had my vaccines. But Monica has been a wonderful, dedicated servant leader for us for the last few years, and we just want her to know how much we care for her and wish her well as she returns to her home part of the country, and that our hearts will be with her as she makes this transition back to be with her family.
Thank you so much. Yes, the gift is as I've already received. Thank you for the love that I've felt, and for just being here to be part of this continued struggle to improve the housing situation in Nashville. So I am grateful for all of you taking your time to work on that and for letting me be part of it. So thank you ever so much. And I'll see you next month.
We got it for maybe a few more weeks. Okay. Thank you all for being with us. Thank you for sharing your afternoon with us. Please keep those that were affected from the floods and the waters and who are struggling right now in your thoughts and in your prayers, and especially our young whippersnapper, that's what I call her, India, who's on the ground working in very difficult circumstances, helping people recover and get into a safe place. Thank you all very much. Have a good afternoon.
You want those of us who helped plan this to just hang on a minute and just,
yeah,
where we are?
So Steve and Maggie and Lily.
And Shirley.
Yes.
And Haley.
Susie, yep. Okay.
I guess basically anybody that wanted to stay.
That's fine. My thinking is, it seems to me like we need an hour to debrief. I tried to take notes as we went along of those items that would be action items that were pressing, Steve, like Councilmember